I'm going to call the meeting to order at 3:02, and we'll proceed on the agenda. First item is public comment on non-agenda items. Presumably, we don't have any comments on non-agenda items. So we'll review the minutes. Did anyone have any
Trustee Gibson,
comment about the, yeah.
We need to first make a motion to rearrange the agenda. Do we have to do that first before we proceed with the agenda? Is that?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's have a motion to put the item on the proposed resolution about global climate crisis. Let's have a motion to move that to the first item on the agenda.
I move to move what is currently B3 to be at the top of the section B.
Thank you.
If that makes sense.
Thank you. Is there a second? Someone, there's only one other person here.
I second, yes.
Thanks. All in favor, raise your
Aye.
hand or say aye. Great, that's passed. So we are moving that on the agenda. Now we'll continue with the minutes. Any comment or revision of the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Great. All in favor of approving the minutes from last meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
That has passed. So the first item on the agenda now is a proposed resolution, recognition of global climate emergency and urgency to take local action to source 100% carbon-free energy by 2030. So we are now able to take comments on this agenda item.
So the first request we received was from Sam Burnt. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. You can turn your video on and you have 3 minutes from when you start for public comment.
Hi, I'm going to go ahead and start then. Thank you. So I want to start off first by taking a moment of silence for those who have already died from the effects of the climate crisis. We have 7 years to prevent climate breakdown. The actions that we take now will determine our collective fate. My name is Sam Burnt. I am a software systems engineer at JPL. I am 28 years old and I will be 35 when our fate is sealed. That is why I'm here with students of PCC and members of Pasadena 100 to ask that you vote in favor of recommending to the PCC board to adopt the carbon-free by 2030 resolution. Right now, PWP is undergoing its power integrated resource planning process and determining how to source Pasadena's electricity for the next 20 years. Further, the Municipal Services Committee is currently drafting and will be voting on a proposed resolution providing climate direction to PWP on January 24th. We have reason to believe that without added pressure for strong climate goals from Pasadena City College, that the MSC will not strive to achieve climate goals in line with what the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says is necessary to prevent climate breakdown. That is, Pasadena doing its part in 100% carbon-free electricity by 2030. Thus, it is timely and imperative that PCC add its voice to ensure that the students of PCC will have a livable future. We are in a climate emergency. Our fate depends on your willingness to lead and your willingness to act now. And we ask that you do and that you vote in favor of recommending this resolution to be adopted at the upcoming board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Next up is Lauren Corey. You can turn your video on. Thank you. And you have 3 minutes from when you start.
Thank you. I would like to stress how important you passing your resolution 753 is towards influencing Pasadena City Council on January 31st. As Sam just mentioned, a week earlier on the 24th, the MSC meets and your decision today will greatly impact their recommendation of 100% by 2030 to the City Council on the 31st. This is an important chain of meetings. Hand in hand is the need for an open public discussion about the specific instructions the City Council gives to PWP before the Integrated Resource Plan gets into full swing. PWP and the IRP committee can head into their year of study without guidelines, or we, the community, can strongly urge the City Council to give them a very clear goal, 100% by 2030. If I'm planning to build a smart home, I don't say to my design team, take the money and time allocated for the first phase, design, and then bring your ideas back to me. I give specific parameters to the team so they can incorporate them into all aspects of their thinking. We can do just that with your resolution, and with 100% being the clear goal for the IRP from the beginning. I have been knocking on doors of Pasadena residents for the past 8 months and have seen a groundswell of support for clean energy, even within this 8-month period. 100% by 2030 has the community support. Residents recognize our climate emergency. PCC has a powerful voice in making this happen, as is PUSD's. Please approve Resolution 753 and send the message to Pasadena's government that you want Pasadena to be 100% by 2030. That should also be the clear goal of the IRP. Other cities in California are already 100%. Why can't we be? Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Next up, Ian Graham. You're on mute. If you can unmute, and then I will start the timer once you start.
Thank you. Hello, my name's Ian Graham. I'm the current Vice President of Sustainability for Associated Students. As you know, global warming-driven extreme heat, drought, and fire have become increasingly serious problems in Southern California. The San Gabriel Valley currently averages 32 days per year where daytime temperatures exceed 95 degrees Fahrenheit. According to UCLA climate scientists, this number could rise to an average of 74 days per year by 2050 and 117 days by 2100. That's 5 months of the year with 95 degrees plus weather. In a survey done with the California Community College Chancellor's Office, out of the 40,000 respondents, roughly 60% of students were housing insecure in the previous year, and nearly 20% were homeless in some form. These extreme temperatures disproportionately affect low-income and housing insecure students. With higher and higher air conditioning costs, how are students expected to pay for school, rent, and energy? Often, they're forced to choose whether to sacrifice time in school by working or unable to afford AC, and sacrifice their health with an increased risk of heat stress or stroke. We urge you to take this problem seriously and consider students' future success. Please approve this resolution.
Thank you. And the last request I received was from Tony Vong. Sorry if I mispronounced. Oh, here we go.
That's fine. It's correct. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Tony, and I'm a student from Pasadena. I want to address the proposed resolution on the importance of going carbon-free by 2030. According to the United Nations, we now only have 7 years to prevent a climate collapse. The San Gabriel Valley is marred by increasingly hotter days. Drought haunts our state for the years, while fires ravage our forests. In response, several branches of local governments have responded by passing similar resolutions for calling for the transition of 100% carbon-free energy use. From the LAUSD school boards to several city councils, such as Sierra Madre and South Pasadena. as well as Alhambra. In the face of this mobilization against a creeping crisis, students wonder what PCC has to contribute for the well-being of future students, future generations. The Inflation Reduction Act passed, providing billions of dollars to municipalities, making the move to become carbon-free. You, the Board of Trustees, have the potential to do your part in changing the environmental collapse to Pasadena's economic boom on renewable energy. Because of this, I hope members of this committee will urge fellow trustees to support the resolution calling on Pasadena to go carbon-free by 2030. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. Thank you for your time."
Thank you very much for all the commenters. We appreciate your input. And so this committee can now consider this. We don't have to vote on the resolution because there will be a vote in the full Board of Trustees tomorrow.
Trustee Gibson?
Yes.
Ideally, you would, as a committee, you would recommend it to the board. So you would have a vote saying that you, the committee, recommends that it get forwarded to the board for their consideration.
Exactly. So if we have if anyone has any comments before we proceed, go ahead, Alton.
Well, first, thank you, everyone, for having come speak with us today. I was thrilled to see this on our agenda for today's meeting and also for our board meeting tomorrow, because we know that this is an absolutely critical issue, not just facing our region, but facing the future of all of our communities. And so I would like to make a motion to recommend to the board that we approve this resolution in light of the urgency of this issue and the urgency of us having to act as a community.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. So I'll call off the names. Alton.
Aye.
Simone.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So we unanimously endorse, and we have one absent. We unanimously endorse this to go as a recommendation to the board for approval of this resolution. Thanks, everybody, for participating. And we will close out this agenda item and move on. So let's do introductions of the folks who are going to be talking about the next updates. And my name is Steve Gibson, trustee for Area 3. Alton.
Hi, everyone. Alton Wang, trustee for Area 7, Arcadia and Temple City.
Simone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Simone Chan. I am the student trustee.
Great. If we could have introductions from our consultants from Strategic Advocates. David.
Hi, everyone. David Nevin with Strategic Education Services. And I'm joined with two of my staff and our legislative advocates, Sabrina and Carol.
Great. Thank you so much for meeting with us. So let's proceed on the agenda, which is legislative updates. We wanted to start with state updates. So if Erica and you folks could give us an update, we'd appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to defer to David because he is our resident expert. So David, take it away.
Sure. So I guess we'll start with a quick budget update, because that's kind of the big, important, overarching thing that happened over this last week. So as some of you know, the governor published his budget for the 2023-2024 fiscal year on January 10th. So last week on Tuesday. Needless to say, the state is facing a pretty significant budget problem in the order of about $20 to $25 billion. And to overcome this, the governor is proposing to do a mixture of pushing out some of the prior years appropriations into future years, as well as reducing some of the available one-time programs of funding. That way he can continue to fund the statutory cost of living adjustment for K-12 schools and community colleges. This is probably the highest cost of living adjustment that we have seen in quite some time. It's 8.13%, which is several hundreds of millions of dollars just for the apportionment funding for community colleges. The only other real major funding increase on the community college side of the budget is for student retention and recruitment. There's about $200 million in one-time funding that will be advocating to ensure that Pasadena gets its fair share of that money. With that being said, we do have a new legislative session that just started over the last 2 weeks. We do have 4 in the Senate, so roughly 1/3 of all legislators are completely brand new. And we do have some new leadership in the Assembly starting midway through the year. So we're looking forward to that. As well as we do have new committee chairs for all 3 of the education policy committees between the Senate Education Committee, the Assembly Education Committee, and the Assembly Higher Education Committee. On the budget side, all of the chairmanships continue to remain the same. Senator John Laird will continue to be our Budget Sub 1 chair, while Assemblymember Kevin McCarty will continue to be our Assembly Budget Sub 2 chair. So they will continue on the seats that they have had for the last couple of years. Most of the budget subcommittees will start their hearings over the next couple of weeks, with the Assembly having their first, the Senate having their first full budget hearing tomorrow. So if you do find interest, please tune into those. That are very informative. Whereas the policy committees will not be starting their their hearings until usually in March, when a lot more of the legislation will be produced. We are coming up to our deadline on this coming Friday for members to submit requests to the Legislative Council. And then in mid-February to late February, about, pardon me, February 19th will be our deadline for the actual bill introduction. So just after that deadline, we'll have a good sense of exactly what bills are coming down the pipeline for higher education. So far, most everything is in spot bill form. There are a couple of pieces that I would note. There's a reintroduction of an education bond. However, in this iteration, we have noticed that most all the money is going towards K-12 and then higher education health facilities. There's not a carve out for actual higher education systems. So I just wanted to note that. And then there are a couple of bills that are related to debt-free college, and in trying to put out the intent that students should not finish college, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, or however many years, with massive amounts of debt as they have been over the past several decades. So as those bills, morph and evolve over the next couple of months, we'll be providing updates as we can to you guys on the board, and try and advocate as well as possible for the district. Finally, we have our legislative lobby day coming up at the end of this month. And I understand there's a very robust contingent coming up to Sacramento to come and visit us and to visit the PCC delegation. So we're currently finalizing the schedule of who everybody is going to be meeting with. And we will begin creating a kind of a leave behind or a one pager of talking points to make sure that what is at the top of the agenda for PCC is reiterated again and again and again to the delegates that represent the campus and the students and faculty and staff, as well as the system overall. So that's something that we'll be working with the board and Dr. Andrehonis on ensuring that that's finalized so that we can make sure that everybody is well informed of PCC's needs.
I have a question.
Yes.
That's okay. So to what extent do you think there's any appetite to talk about the student-centered funding formula and the hold harmless fiscal cliff in light of two things? Number one, the budget projections, showing less revenue coming in over the next couple of years. But the other thing is that, back when they were talking about hold harmless versus, when you get to 24, 25, you'll have the opportunity to go with the funding you have, or we go down to the floor from 2019. The little piece, it's not so little, that gets lost, and this is especially important in light of the governor's projected 8.13% COLA, is that any college that isn't at that hold harmless rate in 24, 25 is going to revert back to 2019 funding that is absent 22% COLA. So every college out there will take, in effect, a 22% cut to their budget. And, with the effects of the pandemic and everything, what is the likelihood that that's not going to completely upset the apple cart? Is there any conversation that you've heard of among legislators for an appetite to revisit the student-centered funding formula?
So we haven't necessarily heard that from the legislators yet. There's no particular legislators that have brought that up. We are hoping to hear that possibly tomorrow during the first Senate Budget Committee. I know that last year kind of ended on a bit of a sour note with that notion, with the Assembly Sub 2 kind of really digging into some of, and especially they dug into Los Rios's administrators on why are they throwing a bunch of money at them with no increase in enrollment. So
well, that also had to do with whether or not they actually hired faculty with the extra faculty money. Yes. And I don't know what the outcome of that ever was, but I think that was the other issue, is the state gave districts money to do certain things and not all districts did them. And I don't know if that was the case in Los Rios. I want to be clear.
Certainly. Oh, sorry, Steve, I think
I was just going to say in the budget, it talks about really looking at a change in enrollment, a return in enrollment over the next few years. So I'm wondering if they built that in there to say they're maybe meaning they're going to look at it in the future, that if all the schools have a real problem returning to previous enrollment, might that mean they need to reconsider something?
Certainly. So, and this is probably the highest priority for ACPO right now. And I know that it's been brought up in conversation with Department of Finance and the State Chancellor's Office, by what did the governor mean when he said in his budget, we will be helping districts whose enrollment does not increase manage their budgets. And it was very, very clearly brought up in a question to the program manager at Department of Finance. What did you mean by that? Did you mean you're going to give us more money to try and increase enrollment and retention and outreach? Or did you mean you're going to take money away from us if we don't, almost as if it's a threat? So we're waiting to see what the trailer bill is going to say on that specific piece, if there is any. And we're still in conversation with Department of Finance, how they intend on avoiding this fiscal cliff. In some conversations, it was suggested to do something like what was done on the K-12 side, where the pandemic had caused about a 24% drop in total statewide enrollment. And the administration came to the table and created kind of a soft landing for that, using a specific 3-year rolling average coupled with another accounting mechanism for their attendance. So certainly the conversation is going. It's more at the administration and Department of Finance level. We haven't really heard a huge amount from any of the subcommittee legislators or on either the Assembly or the Senate yet. However, that's surely to change as committee hearings start. And I do think that this really is an important topic to bring up during the visit up to Sacramento on the 30th. And I think it is necessary to really drive home the point that there are fixed costs at college districts that are continuing to increase more than the cost of living adjustment. For instance, pensions, insurance, and the actual cost of salaries and benefits to the faculty that are necessary to properly provide courses and education for the students. So I think that these are really the talking points to drive home to the members that represent PCC.
Can I follow up on that? I think the other issue that we should also point out is that the governor's budget does not, it doesn't provide COLA for all the categoricals. And so that's of significant concern, especially because I think the student equity, the SEAP funding does not have the same categorical or does not have the same COLA. So that's something that is going to force districts to have to decide, okay, do you backfill it or do you figure out how to offer the same services with less money? And it's,
so you kind of beat me to my next point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And this is one of the talking points that a lot of our other clients in the development of their talking points, they're adding this one in that only about 5 of the categoricals actually received a COLA. So it's really ensuring that the member representatives are aware that only a fraction of the student services and staff services and district services are actually being funded commensurate with inflation.
I was on the webinar call with CCLC today, and someone mentioned about COLA. It would have been good if the COLA could have been stretched out rather than put all the amount up front. If it could have been doled out maybe over time, might have been an approach.
Quick question from me. I mean, obviously there's a lot that can happen between now and the May revise, but are there places where we think that there may be movement in the governor's budget between now and when things really start shaping up a bit?
So, and this comes down to, the political context of the budget itself. As you know, the governor puts out his proposal, and then the legislature is going to take a solid 5 months to really tear apart every single piece that's in that budget. And they will take their opportunity to go deep dive into every single agency and every single level of those agencies. And during that time, the governor's administration and staff will really be listening to what the public is saying, what the legislators are saying. But at the same time, you also have to understand that the governor is going to have some proposals, full well knowing that these may be bargaining chips when it comes down to it in his actual June budget act that the legislature puts forward to him. When that final budget is put forward, it's an agreed negotiation point between the legislative leadership and the governor's administration. And during that kind of 1 month between the May revise and the final budget act, there's a lot of backroom negotiations that happen. There's a lot of trading chits away and we'll sacrifice this if you sacrifice that. So there's always room. It just depends on how much some people are willing to budge on certain projects. So we will find out over the next month or so as the trailer bill comes out what seems to really be at the top of the governor's priority list. And then you'll see him begin to kind of negotiate around those certain points into what he is willing to then sacrifice away for what the legislature wants. So it's really just a constantly evolving process over the next 6 months. But yes, the short answer of your question is we'll see some negotiating back and forth, and there will be changes. I don't think in my 11 years I've ever seen a budget, start at January and actually end the same in June.
Yes.
It's very different by the time it gets there. So I think that the more advocacy comes up and the more that people get in certain decision makers' ears, there will be a lot that changes.
And this is why I'm not a politician.
At some point, I'd like to hear if there's an update on AB 928.
Right now, we don't have an update, but I should have something in the next couple of weeks based on a presentation that I'm working on with folks. And actually, I think you're going to be at the CCLC Ledge conference, and that presentation will be there. So I'll have more up-to-date information at that point.
And I will say that specific topic, it has been, also at the forefront of everybody's minds as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I'm making a presentation with league staff as well as with Jenny May, who is the president of the Statewide Academic Senate and is on the ICAS committee, and we will be talking basically where we are, but I don't have all of that, so I'd like to hold off, but absolutely, as soon as I have the most up-to-date, you will have it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on state legislation? Is there any report on, anybody here can do a report on federal activity? What's happening on the federal level?
So Alex can speak to the, he is arranging the visits. He's working with our colleagues at Glendale College to arrange the visits for the DC trip. I normally go on that trip with you, and I love going on that trip to DC. However, my daughter is a senior, and for whatever reason, Ventura County decided to move up the mock trial competition from the 3rd week to the 1st week of February. So since she is a senior, I don't feel like I can miss her last opportunity to compete. She's done mock trial all 5 years that she's been at her school. So I apologize for having to not join you. But Alex can talk a little bit about what we are doing. But before we go there, I just want to give you a little preview of what I'll report out on tomorrow night as part of my report. And that is when President Biden signed the Budget Act. We actually are getting a $500,000 earmark through Representative Judy Chu's office. She will be at our February 15th board meeting to help celebrate it. And the focus of that earmark is both expanding the number of lactation stations we have on campus, as well as supporting our newly opened Family Resource Center. But we're really excited to have Congresswoman Judy Chu with us on the 15th. And with that, I'll turn it over to Alex.
Thank you. Always good to follow good news. Hello, everyone. Thank you for making the time today. I just want to share a quick update about logistical plans for the February meetings, talk a little bit about how those meetings typically go so we can know what to expect in Washington, and then just open the floor for any questions that relate to that. I'll start with logistics. We've been talking to the students, Associated Students Lobbying Group, which includes Trustee Chan. Thank you for being here. And also on the call is Ranimi Abu-Jar. She's the Vice President for Associated Students. So they will be joining you in Sacramento. But what I've learned is that at present, Their decision in Washington, D.C. is to steer clear of making any legislative visits. The reasoning has to do with academic requirements back here in Pasadena. I'm told that folks have midterms they have to rush back and get to. And so it's going to be tough for them to be able to stick around too far to do meetings on that day. It still could possibly happen, but it's going to come down to how the schedule plays out. But the good news is we are looking at partnering up with our folks to the west at Glendale College. In the past, we've traveled as a party with trustees and other representatives from Glendale, just because we do share some representatives and we do have common interests. And so this time around, we've learned that Glendale plans to send trustees, students, faculty members, and even their superintendent president, a young man by the name of Dr. Ryan Corner, who you may already know. And so I'm coordinating with the offices over there in Glendale to see what we can do to make sure we're all attending the right meetings at the right times. I appreciate the feedback previously given regarding meetings on the Hill. The way these things typically happen in Washington is, like other conferences, there's a few days of conversation and conference sessions. This particular conference is much more prescriptive as far as the notes and the points they want you to make in the legislative offices. So for the students on the call, even if you don't attend the meetings, you'll still learn a lot about what issues are at play at the federal level and where our advocacy can be applied. And I'll pause briefly to point out, another reason the students are not attending these times in February is because they'll be returning in March, I think, for their own lobbying trip.
Yeah.
And so they're choosing to make meetings then instead of in February. So just to return, when you go in February, there will be a few days of conference sessions. You will be handed what they call the green sheet that will talk about all the points that they want you to make as you go around to the different offices.
And can I interrupt? Definitely sign up for the California Legislative Breakfast that is hosted by CCLC, because that's where the California delegation comes together and talks about California focused issues. And the reason it's important is that, you know, the ACCT serves the entire country and there are lots of red states out there. So some items you might expect to see on that green sheet won't be there because ACCT has to walk that balance between red and blue states. So sorry, Alex.
No, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. And she's right. You know, the meetings that we will line up, you're going to be with friendly people, and there are going to be hardly any questions about, you know, what we should be advocating for. So it shouldn't be, you certainly won't be in hostile territory. But just being able to advocate for the specific percentage of Pell Grants or whatever it is they want you to talk about, that will all be revealed when you show up in Washington, D.C. We're also going to do, there was a question that came up about whether we should meet with representatives and talk about more opportunities for earmarks, as Dr. Andrade shared. Last year was a bit of a unique experience as far as my time at PCC. It was the first time we'd had the opportunity to make such an appeal for something so directly called an earmark. And I think we fear that with the changeover in leadership on the Hill, those days may be gone already. I think it might be worth asking, but we're going to have to do a little bit more investigating to see how things are shaking out as the new Congress takes office. To know how those earmarks might fit in there. And I think certainly in meetings with legislators, let's have that question on our minds, because it really was the community grant program that Judy Chu shared with us that allowed us to then apply for those funds and see the earmark come through. So I think that'd be a good thing to find out more about. The other thing that we're going to provide a little bit of background on is, and if any agencies are doing any rulemaking that we need to pay attention to, particularly as it regards Title IX. So we'll have some more information there about what's happening on the administrative executive side as well. But generally speaking, we'll line up a couple, 3 meetings on those visit days, and we'll be working with Glendale College. So we'll have more information about participants and plans as time goes along for those who are traveling to Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about federal legislation or federal action?
Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have anything else on the agenda. We can talk about a next meeting, when it would make sense to have a next meeting.
Well, I think probably what we can do is check in with David and his crew on how things are going in the middle of March, maybe April, just to get a sense of what are the bills that are coming up that we might want to locally advocate for, through having meetings with Holden and Portantino in their local offices. So I think that's definitely we want to, but I think we need to, and Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, we definitely want to give legislators a chance to meet that legislative deadline. And especially the spot bills, we want to make sure that those get a little more flesh on the bones before we start obsessing about them.
Yeah,
Typically members have until mid-February for submitting their bill ideas. So thereafter, we'll have a better idea of what's out there, and we'll continue to update you on bills related to the priorities that we understand are at the top of mind for PCC. And as we share them with you, we'd also appreciate any feedback on bills that we should keep top of mind as well.
And Alex and I will definitely make sure that the committee members here get the actual emails that we get from David as updates come in. We will make sure that those updates are forwarded to you, so you're reading the same information that we're reading.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
So yeah, I would think late March might be a good time, because we might then be able to get a report back from the students who go in. If they're going in March, they might be able to participate in the next reporting. So
that would be great.
Late March, it looks like, might be a possibility.
And also, sorry to interrupt, just a quick question for Alex. I didn't know if you wanted to discuss it now or maybe offline, just to finalize up the meetings on January 30th, just in terms of finalizing with, I do have a reservation with the Department of Finance, and I just wanted to make sure to solidify the timing so we don't have any overlap and allow for travel time and such.
Yeah, I think we can discuss that offline probably is best.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Obviously y'all will figure out some of the timing, but when we do have timing set solidified for the Sacramento trip, that'd be helpful to have a sense as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Any
Trustee Gibson and Trustee Wang, I believe, are you both going to the effective trustee workshop on
or the day before, right? Yeah, I'll
the
be
day before on Saturday.
Yeah,
I'm there on Saturday.
Okay.
Any proposed future agenda items? Hearing none. Then we can, before we adjourn, let me say that I really want to thank the folks from Strategic Advocates for bringing the great information for us. We really appreciate that. And we stand adjourned. Thank you.